Everybody's here. Call the meeting to order. Asked to call roll call.
Belsley.
Here.
Blunier. Hare.
Here.
Lehman.
Here.
Newman.
Here.
Parrott. We have a quorum.
I ask you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no public hearings tonight, but we do have some presentations and special reports. And we'll start with our audit by Wolf, Tesser and Company.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Virginia Love. I'm the audit partner at Wolf, Tesser and Company. We are just going to go over kind of a brief overview of the financial statements, since all the information you get from Julie on a continual basis is more up to date and very well presented. So our audit was for the fiscal year ending April 2018. There are three types of funds that the village presents. There's governmental funds, proprietary funds, and fiduciary funds. You will see kind of as we go along, we group them together with the general fund, the motor fuel tax fund, the tourism fund, the business tax district fund, the IMRF, and the Social Security fund are all grouped together as one. Then the proprietary funds, which are the funds that you are billing your service for. And then the fiduciary funds, the ones that you are holding in care for others, the police pension fund, and the volunteer firefighter fund. We would like to note that the IMRF fund and the Social Security fund, for the first time are separate. In prior years, the IMRF and the Social Security activity were grouped together in one fund. This year, they are broken out. The village presents their financial statements on the modified cash basis of accounting. That means, in general, you will not see any tax receivables. You won't see prepaid insurance, deferred revenue, although this year there is a deferred revenue for the insurance proceeds for roof repairs that are going to show up, but that is unusual. It's just kind of one of those things within the modified cash basis of accounting that is allowable so that you keep your revenue and expenses within the same fiscal year. Also, you won't see accounts payable or any health insurance claims payable. These things you might see generally from a business side of things when you're looking at any business financial statements. On page 1 of our financial statements is our auditor's report. You will see there is an opinion section. That's kind of the most important part of the financial statements for you. And that says, in our opinion, the financial statements fairly present, in all material respects, the modified cash basis position of the Village of Morton. So that is a clean audit opinion, which is the best that you can get. We would like to remind you that the audit report is our responsibility, whereas the financial statements and all of the numbers in it are the village's. We just assist with getting them into the presentation that you see before you. We'd like to just go over an overview of most of the funds. The general fund, you can see, had a surplus for the fiscal year. The revenue was about $11.2 million. The expenses around 10.6, which left you with a surplus of a little over 600,000. The tourism fund also had a surplus, a small one, but any surplus, as you know, is a good one, of 26,000. The business district also had a surplus in the current year of around $200,000. The IMRF fund had a deficit. This was planned. Over the last 2 years, the IMRF tax levy has been decreased in order to increase the general fund. And you did this obviously to decrease the amount that you have in reserve, because the amount levied for IMRF can only be spent on IMRF. In the past years, you have gotten a nice cash balance in that fund, so you're slowly spending down a little bit to match the revenue with the expenses. The Social Security Fund had a surplus. We would like to note that this is due to a transfer. With this being a new fund, the general fund transferred $350,000 to start the fund, which in turn caused this fund to have a surplus. If you take away that surplus, you're going to find a deficit of about the same that you have in the IMRF fund, which was also planned. Here we'd like to just show you the cash balances as a comparative with the prior year and the current year. The surpluses caused slight increases in your cash balances, with the exception of the motor fuel tax fund, and that was just due to the number of projects you had out of the motor fuel tax fund for the year. We'd also like to point out, with any audit, the notes payable and notes receivable that the village has. As you know, you have this outstanding loan for the purchase of property, which you also have a receivable of to match. The balance at the end of the year, you can see listed there, a little under $1.5 million. The proprietary funds, before depreciation, if you guys remember from prior year presentations, depreciation is an estimate of the decrease in useful life of the assets of the village. This has to do with your gas lines, your gas stations, the water sewer fund, the water tower. All of that is being reduced by an estimated useful life. So here we show pretty much the cash in and out of the proprietary funds, and you can see an increase in revenue over expenses of the gas fund, the water fund, with the stormwater fund coming a little bit down from prior years. So here you can see a comparative cash balance of those proprietary funds. So increases in all of them, which is fantastic. In our audit report, we also have pension information. On pages 12 and 13, you can find details of the police and fire pension funds. In the notes of the financial statements, footnote 10 also provides additional information on those. One thing I do want to note to you when you're looking at those statements, the investments are reported on the cost basis, not on the market values. I know Julie does her reports on the market basis, so when you're looking at the two, there is going to be a difference between those. We also have in footnote 9 information about the IMRF, or Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, and the obligations and funding there. In the back, you will see, in the very back, you'll see that the IMRF funding ratio is 91%. This is extremely good, especially when compared to other municipalities in the region. IMRF sets contribution rates every year, and the village has always paid those in full. In one of our letters, the one that says letter to governance, I believe at the top right-hand corner, on the second page we have our recommendations, which we also have listed here so you don't have to kind of flip through and find them. We do recommend that the village establish a fixed asset capitalization threshold policy. We've talked to Julie about this, and we have examples that we can share. Also a fund balance policy. About 10 years ago, the GASB Standards Board, which is the Governmental Standards Board, asked that all municipalities pass a fund balance policy. Many have not, but it is something that we would recommend for the Village of Morton, especially with the size that you guys are. And then also establishing a cash reserve. Cash reserves can cover everything from upcoming replacement to gas lines, water lines, road improvements. You guys are starting to have nice cash balances, so a reserve policy would definitely be a good idea. So we'd like to say a big thanks to Julie and Craig and all of the village staff. They've been wonderful with getting us information as always. And we also like to thank the mayor and you, the board, for allowing us to come and do another year of audit. We definitely appreciate your business and we love coming out. Thank you very much.
Any questions for her?
Could you go back to the slide, just a few back, where it showed the cash balances
For
there at
the
store?
proprietary?
Yeah. There you go. Is that, I couldn't find that inside the, I'm probably looking at the wrong place.
That would be, if you would look on page 9.
There we go.
If you want, I've got this in PDF, I can send you the actual slides so you can see them.
That'd be good. Yeah, it's
The
the presentation's in a good breakdown.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Roger, IMRF's in pretty good shape, so it looks like you'll be able to retire next year if you like.
Is that on the table or?
Thank you.
Yeah, like, is that new?
Morton Economic Council. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to hand out a couple reports for you here, doing my workforce training and having my assistant with me tonight here. So welcome, everyone. Leanne Brown. I am the CEO of the Morton Economic Development Council, and pleased to be here with you tonight to share some economic development progress occurring during our Morton Momentum strategy. It's now approaching 2.5 years since I was welcomed here to Morton to work for the Economic Development Council and the Chamber, and it's been and continues to be a great welcome into our community. So I greatly feel blessed to have the opportunity to bring people together, connecting people and resources for growth opportunities. And as we've heard often lately is the term One Morton. And just want to share before we get into details some meaning behind that as it plays into economic development as well, as it takes all of us to drive economic growth and help our people from young and old alike and our businesses to really thrive, which generates opportunities, which good timing and hearing the audit, how can we further impact the revenues to generate additional revenues to reinvest in our community and reinvest in our businesses and our people. I was recently at a conference, and of course there you're asked to introduce yourself and share where you're from. And just kind of wanted to share this story from you, and maybe it'll give you some frame of mind of how you could answer this question and help define our why Morton. Why Morton for living here? Why Morton for working here? Why Morton for operating your business here? And so as I introduced myself, of course stated my name and shared that you will likely have a taste of my community as the holiday season approaches. As your family and friends gather, you will likely be gathered around a pumpkin pie. And at that time, you will have a taste of my community, Morton, Illinois. Because 85% of the pumpkin is produced here in our community, with Libby's producing 85% of the canned pumpkin. And from that, it spurred the conversations of different articles and stories over the next several days at the conference, instead of what we probably often hear, unfortunately, is why Illinois? Why are you in Illinois? Illinois this, and you hear the negative. And so I challenge everyone as we go through this and you understand your community, why Morton? And share a story of why you live here and why your business operates here and why you work here. So hopefully tonight as we go through some updates, you'll hear some of that of why Morton for our assets and opportunities that we have. And I'm very thrilled to share some of those with you tonight. So in the handout, I always like to share a little bit of the history, maybe. Oh, there we go, maybe. Oh, we got it. Now I'm buzzing. Excellent. So in the handout, the report to the trustees and department heads, there's a little bit more detail than up here on the slides, but wanted to share some information visually as well. But always a good time to define our history. The Morton Economic Development Council was established in 2008, and we have operated in 5-year strategies. So we are in our third 5-year strategy that was created and launched in 2008. And as you can see up there, always like to highlight our overall mission and goals, and then definitely highlight our board of directors, who give a lot of time to our organization and more so to our community. So definitely want to recognize them here. And going forward, our current strategy is Morton Momentum, so our third 5-year strategy. And in your packet there, it really outlines the focus of that. But in whole, before we go through details, our goal is to assist our local employers with their growth opportunities and direct resources to help them offset any challenges impeding their growth. We continue to build on our diverse mix of industry, which again, why Morton would be another great asset of the wide array of industry and business sectors that we have in our community. We identify and market available sites, recruit retail and service businesses based on market demand, identify and engage entrepreneurs and small businesses to Morton's business climate, strengthen our downtown through connectivity and placemaking enhancements, and share the why Morton for others to embrace. Next, I just wanted to touch on our 5-year goals. So this gives you a snapshot of how we've been tracking since 2017, and then we'll go into details of how we're tracking for 2018. We continue to focus on 6 different goal areas. One being creating new jobs, and we'll go through detail of how we track that. Goal 2 there, the increase of commercial and industrial projects. And we set a baseline of that every 5 years, and then we track the growth beyond that benchmark. Goal 3 there is the increase in retail sales tax, which is tracked by the state. Work with Julie on those reports that she receives from the state to see how we're tracking. New business locations, how are we tracking on new businesses coming to Morton? And the last 2 what has been our EAV increase. So how are we doing on the types of projects that are coming to our community and existing businesses expanding. And then lastly, really focused on building the entrepreneur and small business network. Make sure that they're well connected and aware of the resources available. So to jump in on some specifics, wanted to go through how we track some of this and share some highlights. This year, 2018, we're tracking 355 new jobs created. And this is reported through a multitude of programs and business meetings that we conduct through the EDC. One being our Morton Micro Grant. We have a direct funding source specific to job creation. And so they have to report the job creation because the funding is tied to that. And so that is one way that we track jobs that are being created. Another one is through our business retention visits. In your packet there, you'll see that we've made, I think it was 38 retention visits so far this year, with a wide array of businesses hitting all the different business sectors. And also through our enterprise zone program, which continues to be a ideal tool to help businesses with their commercial and industrial projects. It gives them the waiver of sales tax material and a discount on the building permit fee, which really helps offset that upfront cost in expansion or new construction. Also received the permit reports from the village, and just to give you an update on that, we're tracking over $3 million in new commercial and industrial construction permits. So we've had some great projects occur this year. In your packet there, it has highlighted some of the key projects that have occurred that are utilizing that program. Some being the Villas of Hollybrook. They added their new memory care unit. Morton Buildings, they have done the complete renovation of their corporate office. And we've had some enterprise rental car. They're building their new location, and several other projects that are noted in that. Also looking at the sales tax generation, this is definitely one that we want to track because this can be something that visitors and employers that are in our community, our daytime population really boosts the traffic during the day, and this is one benefit to that is generating additional sales tax. Business attraction, we spend a lot of time, thankfully things have ramped up and we get a lot of inquiries. We've probably had well over 23 inquiries that we've directly responded to because there's been a fit for our community for them to look at a specific site. And then from that, you can see the list there. Again, that reflections memory care, enterprise rental car, a medical facility, Yamashin, which is a co-locate with G&D, Nina's Hardware, Crown Realty, Mr. and Mrs. Furniture, Unum Fine Wine and Whiskey, and TWM Engineering, to name some of the new businesses that we've attracted this year to our community. EDC Connect, that is something that we've started this, continued this year, in inviting our investors and businesses to come to the table, round table, and engage in a specific topic or conversation to help them make sure that they're aware of resources, and more so they know who's operating in their backyard. So as a business need comes up, hopefully they know what other business services and products are available right here in their back door to go to versus not being able to find them. Some of our main focus areas on development planning, I'm sure a lot of the conversation out there continues around Kmart and the Field Shopping Center. Kmart, we have toured that facility with a few existing businesses for needed expanded space. We also did a site submission. The federal USDA is looking a national search for a new headquarters and research lab. We submitted the Kmart site in partnership with Dan Maloof, the owners, and the Greater Peoria EDC for that site specifically. We are still on the list. Haven't heard any other updates. Of course, being a national search, there's probably about 136 other sites. But we're a good fit, and the Kmart facility was a good fit. Dan Maloof's had a few interested tenants, and so we continue to touch base with him and really try and work hard on revitalizing the Kmart location. Field Shopping Center has new owners, Woodcrest Capital. They're a group out of Fort Worth, Texas. They own 51 other shopping centers. In a phone conversation, they buy property to own property and reinvest. We chatted through several prospects and ideas, and we'll continue to partner with them. Sounds like they are a positive new owner and willing to engage in opportunities and prospects. So just wanted to highlight some of those for you. I always like to share this because why are all these strategies and focus areas even important? And as the audit alluded to, those revenues are critical. They're critical for us to reinvest in the operations of our village and infrastructure. And that is definitely a key asset for our community, is the infrastructure. We recently had a great conversation with the gas department and really walk through the capacity and the quality of infrastructure we have, and what that means, even down to the crews that work on the line are the same crews that go out and repair the line. So companies knowing that and realizing not only quality infrastructure, but vested infrastructure. That's critical to businesses. They need that. They need to know it's the water and gas and other services are going to be there for them to operate. And so I always like to share this because the more industrial commercial projects that we can bring to the table and help our existing businesses grow, it creates all those drivers of new jobs, increases the EAV, generates property tax, which is a direct input to all of our taxing bodies, and creating new jobs to increase our supply chain. So always like to share that. And for those that don't know, the EDC is partially funded through the gas fund, and this is why, because when new businesses locate here or expand their services, that is a direct benefit back to the village of increasing that gas usage, and this is why it matters. Going on to kind of highlight just a few things that we are focused on this year. Workforce. Anymore used to go out and meet with businesses or prospects, and it was, I need this ideal location. Now the conversation circles around workforce. And I don't know if you've noticed all the we're hiring signs around our community, which is a good sign because businesses are doing well. There's just the workforce pipeline is not there at the level that we need it to be in order to fill those spots. So that's been a lot of focus on the career pathway enhancement. We have a great working relationship with District 709, Illinois Central College, other colleges and universities on what are those skill sets, what are some dual credits, how can we tool our future workforce to fill those pathway opportunities. The Morton Mentor Program, hopefully you've heard about that, continues to be a success. When we launched 2 years ago, we started with a pilot program of 12 students. The next year bumped up to 38 students. And this year we launched with I think close to 52 students and 46 mentors. So definitely a growing program there. Some of our committee highlights, just to run through that. We have our Business Development Committee, and the focus there is business friendly. The process and procedure, how can we equip prospects and businesses with the information that they need to work through the process for their expansion or new construction projects. We developed a checklist to communicate out there to help that process. Other thing that we're working on there is just different resources that are needed to fill in the gaps. We have some great tools and resources at the table, but we constantly look at what are other communities doing and how can we offset to have further growth. So that continues to be in the works, and that committee meets monthly to review those aspects. We have our Community Development Committee. This has been over the last year. We established this committee with all of our taxing bodies and other key entities such as our community foundation. So we meet and talk about collaboration, resources, and really defining our why. Organization committee, we focus on building our EDC organization, and one new focus will be a Morton Made concept to really help promote and educate other businesses and community members on the businesses that are here, what products, what innovation, what technology are they producing that they can share the story of what's happening here in our community. After our last annual lunch meeting, we had Johnny Wheat, the owner of 4B Components, speak. And after that, so many people said, wow, I never knew what they did. I didn't really know where they were located. And now every time I drive by the grain bins and I see the buckets, I can kind of smile and know that those are being made in Morton and what an impact that one company is making. So we're looking at other strategies to share the Morton Made, businesses built to last. A lot of our companies are generational companies, and that makes a huge difference because they have a long-range plan. So we're very fortunate there. To touch on a couple other things, trying to build our entrepreneur and young professional connectivity. We have been hosting our Morton Mixers. If you haven't been, I encourage you to come out. The environment there is a lot of drive and just passion behind business. We do a fireside chat with a business owner to share their business journey. And a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners are there, and it just helps people connect and realize that a business journey isn't easy. There's a lot of change factors, but there's also a lot of resources available out there. And of course, we continue to focus on downtown Morton. I think last time I spoke, we looked at the redevelopment plan that was done in 2011. We continue to use that tool as a resource and a guide of other key areas to focus on. Just a few other things to highlight of going forward. Looking at what do we need to focus on to help educate us on next steps and decisions. And a lot of that's been a focus around data collection of what data is available to us, how often it is updated, and what story is it telling us about our market that we can make smart decisions of supply chain gaps or other resources that are needed. So that's kind of the top area there. Population growth. We have had a lot of conversations on attracting the 24 to 44-year-old population to fill those workforce needs. One thing that comes with that is what type of housing do we have available for that market? And that's something that what is that stock? What is that desire of that population? And do we have that available? Is it more the mixed use development projects? Is it the row houses that were in the downtown redevelopment plan? So that's some things that we're trying to quantify and understand what we have available in our market. Looking at development process and resources, we look at that with sustainability, and an incentive is only as good as an incentive. If you take a C site that doesn't make sense and throw a bunch of incentives with it, that's not a sustainable development. We want to make sure it's a right fit for the business to come and expand in our community. When we're out meeting with businesses, a specific question that we ask them is trying to understand their supply chain and what are some unmet needs, what are some unmet resources that they have, so we can aggregate that and understand what do we not have available here for our businesses to grow. Where are they having to send services elsewhere to finish their process? Where are their goods and services coming in from? And in aggregate, does it make sense to outreach to a business? Did you know that there's 12 businesses here that order product X twice a month? Have you looked at our community? So that's what we're trying to understand when we're out meeting with the businesses. Quality of life continues. That's another big focus for workforce growth. That's the questions that we get. What do we have available for the younger generation that we're hopeful of attracting here? And some of that plays into the walk and bikeability that we have a lot of strategy around. Developing additional pocket parks for those unique spaces to enjoy. And we've recently looked at what a wayfinding system would look like to help bridge that connectivity throughout our community. We've also had conversations on continuing to be a tourism partner through the chamber and in partnership with the place. We have a lot of continued great activities, a lot of great community events are happening. But what else can we do to be a partner to help grow that demand and look at additional space available to infill other meeting space, convention space, sporting events. So I think we have a lot of great entities that can be pulled together to continue to drive bringing in visitors to our community, which helps grow sales tax. And speaking of sales tax, we'll wrap up here. Just want to highlight a regional partnership with Shop Local 365. And the goal behind this is to encourage businesses, residents, visitors to shop local, meaning brick and mortar. So even shopping at your national retailers makes an impact to our community. So we've tried to encourage people. The fun slogan that a lot of people use is Amazon donating gift baskets to your church fundraiser or your youth organization? No, but a local retailer is. So think about that when you're out shopping and you're shopping online. Is it available in my community? And try and make those purchases, shifting from online to brick and mortar. So that's the goal behind there. Businesses and community members can engage with hashtag ShopLocal365 and engage in the social media on that one. So with that, I know went through a lot of information. I could stand up here and talk for hours about projects and other things, initiatives in the works, and I'd be happy to do so, but I know there's other things on the agenda. But with that, hopefully that report is helps detail out some of the strategies and where we're tracking and why. But definitely would be happy to answer any questions tonight. And doors always open. Happy to sit down with any of you, any community members or businesses at any time to chat through what else do we need to be aware of and add into the strategy.
Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Leanne, for the update.
Yeah.
A lot of information, and appreciate the heavy lifting you do for you and your team for the community here with economic development. I was glad to hear about and know that you've reached out and already had contact or communication with the new owners with the Field Shopping Center.
Yeah.
And I would hope you'd, as you have in the past, have the village staff and the team that we have here also let us know what we can do to get engaged and get the new
Absolutely.
owners acclimated to the community, and let us find out what kind of plans they have in store and how we can help them be successful
Yep.
with that development as well.
Will do. Absolutely.
And we may have to look at a TIF district for that area to revive.
The one problem is they make money as it is now. They make money as it is now.
Oh.
So from a redevelopment standpoint, it's difficult to ask a property owner to reinvest into it. And so that's one of the ways that we are trying to be creative there, because it's a very complex problem to try to solve when you have a place that we look at it doesn't necessarily fit the brand of Morton, right? We can all say that. But as a investor or a property owner, they do real well. And so we don't want to hear those things, right? You're hoping that it's the opposite. So those are things that it's hopefully in the new hands, because we were in a problem with the previous owners because there was no movement at all. So hopefully with this, that we've got some open mind, open hearts. I guess a good phrase, to see if there's something that we can do to move that property forward, because there's a lot of deferred maintenance there that's screaming to be done. But again, if it were your and I's individual money, we might be taking that same approach versus putting at risk tens of millions that it might actually take.
And that's why we may have to look at a TIF to help
Absolutely.
generate them to spend money there.
There's some certain things that we can look at locally that have been pretty successful. You look at look at some different areas that are just in Peoria that actually have turned some of those properties around, and so we definitely want to try to keep the communication channels open with them and keep it moving forward, because I think we all know, right? I mean, it's something that we'd like to, it's an entrance into the community.
There's some of us sitting around this table that are old enough to know when that was a vibrant
Remember Coast to Coast?
commercial.
I know you and me
shopping
are.
center. Yeah.
Do you remember when Coast to Coast was there? That was the coolest little hardware store that was there. So I mean,
Jeff
but,
and I would
yeah.
remember when Middleton's was there.
Yeah, that's right. So
yeah.
but
Excellent.
So do you want to take a minute to explain the hometown holidays?
Yeah. So
Since you got the mic,
I'll put on my
we're
other
making
hat.
a big improvement there, so.
And share some other updates on upcoming community activities. Hometown Holidays will launch on Friday, November 16th. That is our annual tree lighting, which will take place at 7 p.m. at Memorial Plaza. And we have a lot of different activities downtown that evening that families can enjoy. Of course, come get your picture with Santa so you can get your Christmas cards ready. And then new this year, we have a market. In discussing with the mayor and a few of his ideas, we are closing Washington Street, and we've had several responses to locally made craft vendors, other sport groups, I think even, and businesses that are going to set up and have a little market along there so people can come down and shop and enjoy those local vendors. And a lot of stores are staying open late. Strolling carolers, luminaries on the back of that form. If you would like to recognize or celebrate or in memory of somebody, you can sponsor a luminary, and we'll put those out, and all the funds for that go right back into our community foundation.
And this is one of those events, I know me and Trustee Belsley have been working with Place, the Pumpkin Land,
Yeah.
that we had these ideas and they've taken it on, so community citizens are gonna close that street and have it. So the last few years, we have this Christmas tree lighting, And the mayor says something to kids and their paintings. Now, hopefully, there's going to be other activities from hot chocolate to kids. So it's more of a family event. So we get everybody involved, and it's so nice that the citizens are
Yeah.
doing this work and organizing it. I
Yeah,
love
we
it.
just had a 4 o'clock meeting in our office today on wrapping up some of the details, and it's been a great partnership with many volunteers and the place. Also, just want to share the Peoria Area Visitors Guide. That, of course, highlights Morton in there. And then take a moment to share our Morton story with a fun postcard there. So send that off to somebody.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Leanne, as well, I want to thank you for coming out this evening. Question I had to entail with the Workforce Pipeline Initiative this year and the Career Pathway Alignment. You mentioned that you were in partnership with the District 709 and also with ICC. And possibly, did you say Bradley maybe even as well?
Yes, we've had
Some different places,
conversations. with
greater
Brett.
Peoria, EDC. If a business is, so just trying to make sure I understand that correctly. So you're saying that that the EDC is aware of different businesses that have, hiring issues or need help in hiring. Is that correct?
Correct.
So if a business, for those, I guess, businesses that aren't aware that this is out there, what would be the correct way for them to be able to allow the EDC to know? Hey,
Yeah,
I have a need for employees.
Call, email us. We'd be happy to sit down and really understand those needs. I sit on the Regional Workforce Alliance Committee, and so we meet about every other month, and it brings regional partners together so we can be equipped with what new programs, certifications, training courses is Illinois Central College releasing, what type of graduates are coming out of Bradley. Connecting to instructor and professor directly has been a success, and so that's something that we can try and make those matches to have that direct conversation. And there's just a lot of resources that we can put people with on. We may not get somebody in your door tomorrow, but at least we can help you be aware of other pipeline opportunities that make sure you're plugged into. And we really want to understand what are the needs of businesses for certifications or skill set. So District 709 can understand that as they are developing curriculum. They are looking at additional dual credit opportunities, and they're also looking at certification opportunities. So eventually a Morton grad will have many other opportunities to have check boxes by their name for those dual credits and certifications, and just make them aware of the jobs available here in their community.
I appreciate that, and I could even say within our local families business, it's difficult at times to hire. I think everyone has hiring issues to some degree, and finding ways to partner and to essentially different communication channels and hiring. I think that's awesome. So
Yeah,
appreciate you
absolutely.
mentioning that. And then lastly, you did discuss a little bit about prospecting. How I guess there's a couple sites you talked about Kmart as one. How there's a process as far as prospecting. We of course have a lot of open places in Morton that are available in different spots. Is there someone's sole responsibility, or is it a joint responsibility for finding businesses to prospect that are out there?
Sure. So Lenore and I, Lenora Fisher is our Community Development Director. Both of us work with developers, prospects, business owners, site selectors on the available spaces that we have in our community. Recently, we started to compile that client prospect list, removing the ownership details and listing out what the client needs. 10,000 square feet, I need an overhead door, I need parking for 5, I need a little bit of office space, whatever those high-level details are. And we've started to send that out to our investors, developers, those that own property, and try to make those matches. Sometimes if property's leased, we don't know if there's space available. Somebody could have a lease and it expires in 6 months, and I want to try and fill that lease. So they may respond, hey, I might have a viable option for client 2 on that list in 6 months. And so we'll make that connection, go out and do a site visit with them, and make sure that they're aware of those opportunities. You know, we attend a lot of site selectors, conferences, and there's a lot of ways to plug into that market and making sure that Morton is on their network. We send out our communication to let people know of space available. So we try and hit it from multiple angles and really educate those first touch points, whether it's a marketing firm, an architect, a contractor, on what space and resources we have available. So as, you know, a financial institute is working with a client, hopefully they have a little bit more knowledge in their wheelhouse to share with those clients of, hey, there might be some opportunities here in Morton, and here's what I know, but I'll connect you with the EDC so they can take you through the full list of sites and resources.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Linda.
All right, thank you.
Public comments. Anybody else like to make a public comment? The consent agenda tonight is the approval of the minutes, the regular meeting October 15th, 2018, and the approval of the bills. If I could have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Call the roll.
Bosley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I have nothing tonight, the clerk.
Just one item tonight, Your Honor. I've received several inquiries lately about the elections coming up, specifically the one tomorrow. But a lot of people are confused, I think, as to what municipal offices were voting. I informed them that the next consolidated municipal election will be held April 2nd, 2019. The general election is tomorrow, so there won't be any municipal offices open on that one. So that's in April 2019, and the candidate petition filing period for that one will be December 10th through the 17th. And feel free to contact me if you have any questions.
Thank you. Village Administrator.
I have a couple items tonight, Your Honor. First of all, I'd like to give you an overview. We're wrapping up the renewal for 2019 calendar year for the health, dental, and life insurance. And I just wanted to go over on the health insurance, that's the biggest expense, pretty much one line item, one of the things that we have. And I gave you each a handout that I had sent out to you earlier, and honestly, I need to start with page 2 rather than page 1. Page 2 has 3 columns on there, and it shows in the far left column is our current coverages. The second column is renewing at the current coverage, and then the third column is an option of increasing. We currently have a stop loss for each insured that we pay the first $55,000 of claims. The far right column would be increasing that stop loss to $65,000 per person. And I have chosen to basically keep everything as we have had it for 2018, because if you look at the bottom third line up from the bottom, you will actually see that increasing our stop loss will actually estimated to increase our cost because we have more exposure for claims, and the savings on the fixed cost on the premiums for that stop loss insurance isn't enough to get us over the increase in the claim cost. So I have chosen to renew us, basically keeping everything the same as what it was for 2018, same carrier, same stop loss carrier, and same stop loss threshold. The first page there in my normal colored columns that I like to present, I just wanted to give you a comparison over the last 4 years of where we have been and where I think we're going to end up for this year and what they are estimating for 2019. So if you look in yellow, the first column there, the renewal they're estimating a total cost of just over $2 million for our staff insurance for 2019. That's made up of fixed costs, which once again are the premiums for the stop-loss insurance and the administration fees that are charged by the company that processes our claims for us. And that's coming in at just over $461,000, and the projected claims are about $1.6 million. For 2018, based on current activity, I project that our total cost will be about $1.6 million, which, as you can see, is a good number in comparison to what we've had the prior 2 years and what they're anticipating for next year. 2017, our actual costs were about $1.8 million, and in 2016 it was also $1.8 million. We continue to see an increase in our stop-loss coverage premium because we basically continue to have that oddball insured that has, say, $70,000 in total cost. So their exposure is greater because we seem to be having more and more people hit that $55,000 threshold, and so they're having to pay out more, so they're raising our premium on us, basically. So I just wanted to bring you up to date on where we were with that and give you an idea of what the costs are. Trustee Newman asked me if I had budgeted for this to be, you know, what we're going to be spending for the next 4 months of 2019. Pretty much. I mean, I tried to estimate when we did the budget where we would be as far as health insurance based on what they had estimated for 2018, which was much higher than what I think it's going to actually be. So I think we'll be fine as far as the budget goes. And the second item I had is the renewal for our property and casualty liability package policy, our work comp, and then we also have a small cyber liability policy. And I had sent you a 3-column comparison. Our package insurance is covered by the Illinois County Risk Management Trust, or ICRMT, and they basically are a group of municipalities and counties, Tazewell County for one, that pool it's a risk pool, they pool their premiums, and they are all drawing insurance claims on the same pool. Our premium has gone up about $6,000, 5.5 for next year, which when you look at the highlighted items of increased property values, I think that increase is, you know, pretty appropriate. If you go down to the fourth section from the bottom, it shows our work comp, and actually our work comp premium is going down about $4,500, which is actually good because our claims have gone, we've had good claim experience rates in the last few months, and actually because we're covering a higher amount of payroll, but we're actually paying less for that because of our experience rate. And then also we carry a $1 million cyber liability policy if something were to ever happen that we get hacked and have a release of some type of information, which I'm not sure what they could get to, but we're advised that at least $1 million in coverage is appropriate to cover us for that, and that premium has stayed about the same. So the only thing that is still up in the air on our work comp, it is a state law that if policemen or firefighters, which we don't have a full-time fire squad, but our police, if one of them gets hurt on the job in a work comp incident, we are required by law to pay their full salary rather than the 2/3 that is normally paid to an employee when they're off on work comp. They offer a premium, an additional premium of $8,075 that we could add to our work comp policy, where the work comp would cover 100% of the police officer's salary if something were to happen. Jeff and I talked about this earlier. It's kind of a toss-up of, you know, whether you want to spend $8,000 and on the chance that one of them might get hurt next year. You know, you just don't know. If one of them were to get hurt, you're looking at between 20 to 25,000 if they're off for the entire year. So it's one of those things. I was just kind of looking for your recommendation whether we should add that or just go with what we've always had and, you know, expose ourselves somewhat to that risk. So, if anybody had any thoughts on that.
I'd be willing to just expose ourselves to the risk.
You know, if we had a larger force, or if we had also firefighters, that we insure our volunteer firemen, but they aren't paid near what a full-time firefighter is paid, and our paramedics are not considered firefighters for this law, so I kind of agree that it's
I would agree with Trustee Newman.
okay. All right, we'll just keep everything as we've had it in the past couple of years, so.
But just one comment back to the health insurance on the second column.
Uh-huh.
It does show a difference of 59,000, 230,000
Right.
more for the insurance. So
Right.
health insurance is going up over 59,000. So
But as you can see in their first column there, they estimated our cost to be just over 2 million for 2018, and I'm thinking we're going to come in about 1.6. So you never know what the future might hold for any one person, but hopefully we'll keep costs down for next year also.
but we have to plan for the worst when
That's
it comes to
right.
health.
Julie, thank you for that work on this. Just if you could elaborate just one more time from 18 to 19, just the summary of expected annual costs. I mean, it looks like an increase of about 25%, 26%.
Right.
And that's pretty significant, I would
Right.
think. Could you just walk through that one more time, where that mostly comes from, or?
It basically is cost of claims. If you look at the third column, or the third line from the bottom, I'm expecting about 1.2 million in paid claims for 2018, and they're estimating 1.6 for 2019. So really the cost, the increase, the fixed costs are going up slightly. It looks like about $19,000. But the estimated cost increases for the estimated claims, because we do pay up to, you know, like I said, up to the first $55,000 for each insured. We have a couple of insured who have a higher stop loss because of their claim history. So, you know, it depends on how things, you know, fall out on each person as to what we're going to be paying in claims. So,
I
and
for one,
unfortunately, we can.
26% just is, but I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Right, and unfortunately, we're not in a position where we could go out and get a fully insured policy that would offer the coverage levels that we have for our size of group. We're a small group, but we have a very rich plan, so it's just not one that's out there on the market to get a fully insured policy for. So.
And you're not asking for motions or nothing tonight. You're going to come back later with that.
No, pretty much we've kept everything the same, so there really doesn't need any board action on it.
All right, understand that. All right, thank you, Julie, for all that work. Chief of Police,
I have nothing this evening, Your Honor.
thank you. Corporation Counsel,
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
thank you. Director of Fire and Emergency Services,
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
and Director of Public Works.
One item tonight, Your Honor. There's A and B. I assume, Pat, I can add these together. I promise I didn't add 90 pages to this to extend the meeting, but this is an important one. So in front of you is Resolution 14-19. It's a resolution authorizing the purchase of natural gas from PIFA Incorporated, approving the execution and delivery of a gas supply agreement, and other documents related to said purchase, and also the approving of the issuance of bonds by PIFA. Item B is Resolution 15-19. This is a resolution authorizing amendment to Natural Gas Management Agreement regarding the purchase of natural gas from PIFA Incorporated. At this point, Pat and I have been working on this, and he's going to address his perspective, and then when we're done, I'd like an opportunity to address my perspective and then be able to answer any questions that you guys have.
And I want the public to see how many papers we're talking about on the topic that they're talking about tonight. And I believe both of you went to a meeting on this matter, so a lot of work has been done with these two, and you have read all this.
I have.
Okay. All right. From there, we will proceed.
Before I proceed, do you want a motion in the second on the action items, or would you like me to go ahead?
What would you like? Why don't you read it first?
Okay. So the proposed agreement, and I'll focus on item A. Item B is really a tag along. Utility gas management is our supply manager for our gas supply. We have an agreement with them. The duration of that agreement does not match the duration of the proposed agreement with PIFA. So item B just syncs those two up. So item B is really ministerial in my opinion. Item A would be to commit to a long-term gas supply agreement with PIFA. It is a part of a prepaid natural gas transaction where PIFA is going to issue bonds. It's going to take the money from the bonds and enter into a contract with J. Aaron, which is an affiliate of Goldman Sachs, which will call for the delivery of natural gas over a long period of time. The duration of the agreement could be as long as 33 years. So this is a long-term commitment to purchase natural gas. The benefit to the village from this long-term commitment is a discount on the gas supply, 30-cent initial discount during this first period. A minimum discount of 30 cents, and that's per MMBTU, which others than me could explain what that means, but 30 cents is a minimum discount for the initial 5 to 7 year period. Thereafter, the minimum discount is 24 cents per MMBTU. I've been through the agreement a number of times because this is a relatively complex transaction. I have resolved a lot of the concerns that I initially had before I got into the agreement. Some of the reassuring factors is the village is under no liability on these bonds. We're not issuing them. It's not our indebtedness. These aren't our bonds. They're PIFA bonds. Our indebtedness or our obligation is just under the gas supply agreement. That's an indebtedness or an obligation, not an indebtedness, but an operating expense of the gas utility to be paid from those funds. While we do have to do some financial disclosures, it is not because we're a part of the liable parties under those bonds. Any of the other issues which that I think is most important salient point from a liability control standpoint for the village, through my review, I've identified two issues, and they're the two issues of significance that the board should note as potential drawbacks, and these are the only two of significance that I wanted to call the board's attention to. We are committing to a supply of natural gas for a 33-year period of time, and the two concerns I have are what if we were to lose a large natural gas customer and we were then to not have a demand in order to buy the supply. So we're going to buy 70% of our anticipated needs. What if those needs fall significantly? We're committed to buy this gas and we may not need it. The agreement provides that the gas we don't need would be remarketed, or attempts would be made to remarket it or to reallocate it. So we're a part of a pool of a number of municipalities. So if we don't need 20% of our supply, but Jasper, Indiana needs more, it could be reallocated by agreement, or it could be remarketed, sold to another municipality who's not a part of this pool. The risk exists that we don't need the supply and they can't resell it and they can't reallocate it. Then we have to buy the supply, we have to pay for the supply we don't need. Utility gas management, our gas supply manager, and those associated with the project don't believe that's a risk of significance. They'd be remarketing a discounted supply of natural gas over market prices. But that's when thinking about the potential downsides, that's one. Similarly, if we were to ever sell our gas utility, and I know that's not in the works, but on a 33-year contract, you have to at least contemplate the possibilities that could present themselves to future boards. We have the same issue. Basically, if we don't need any supply, the supply we're committed to, efforts have to be made to remarket that or reallocate it. And if those weren't successful, we have financial obligations that exist under the contract for the life of it. So what that would mean is if you're ever contemplating a sale of the gas utility, you would at least have to wrangle with the fact that there's some uncertainty as to potential lingering obligations under this agreement even after the utility is sold. So those are the two potential downsides to be measured against in your assessment, the discount information. And I think Greg's run the numbers to put those into real dollars and cents for the village. Any other issues I identified, and I talked to other attorneys who represent other communities considering this, try to share information and thoughts. I feel like we've vetted and explored this as thoroughly as possible under the time constraints and circumstances. My other concerns have generally been resolved. So,
Great, thank you.
Go ahead. Go ahead with your comment.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, Pat, if you could add to, I know we keep talking about the 30-some year, and I'll get into the numbers, but there is the 5 to 7 year reset period. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, or you want me to add to it?
Sure. So the bonds are set up with essentially balloons. So there will be an initial period of 5 to 7 years that will be fixed based upon market conditions and where it looks like the bond issuance will be most productive. At the reset period, basically they refinance the bonds, and when those bonds are refinanced, that could change the discount. That's why we have this 30-cent minimum discount for the first 5 to 7 years. And then at subsequent reset periods, that discount could decrease, but if it ever falls below the minimum thresholds, we have the ability to essentially decline to purchase under the agreement. So,
Yes.
and those reset periods are important benchmarks throughout the life of the agreement, because those would be the moments within which terms change. We also have the ability to adjust quantities potentially at the reset periods. So if we needed additional supply, or if our supply was to be reduced, we have those opportunities at the reset periods.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, bottom line is, out of that 24 cent, I like to use that as the threshold of the reset period. 5 cents of that is a management fee. We pay 6 cents now. I think that's an appropriate number. But basically, if you do the numbers, to me, the bottom line is, if we don't save a minimum of $164,000 a year in the form of a discount off the index, and I'll explain that annually, that's 866,000 decatherms times 19 cents. If we don't save that annually, then we can opt out at the 5 to 7 year reset period. On the negative side, or as I like to call it, the less positive side, the discount could be zero. On the positive side, the discount could be $200,000 a year. So that's really what we're voting on here tonight, in my opinion. I went to Effingham to listen to this with Pat. I wanted him to come along. I felt this was a good meeting for him to come to. Scott Stidman came along also. This is an opportunity for 51 municipals right now. Utility Gas Management put this together, specifically Ron Reagan. And at this point, there's a lot of meetings tonight. There are 12 that are in. If we're to be in, that would account for 70% of the load that we're going to need for this program to move forward. And I think right now there's one that's out. The one that's out doesn't even amount to 2 days worth of our gas. Right now, the ones that are in, some people aren't even familiar with, who's in this type of program. It's mostly Midwest, towns like Rensselaer, Indiana, Montgomery City, Missouri, Stanberry, Missouri, Winchester, Illinois, Pawnee, Illinois, on and on. So Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, but 51 of us in this group with Utility Gas Management. This program is not available, and you can add to this too, Pat, is not available to Ameren. This is not available to the big guys. This is available to the little guys to save money. Some of the little risks that I've looked into with Pat and Ron specifically is with that discount, what's it based on? How do I understand that? Basically, we purchase most of our gas based on Panhandle Eastern Pipeline, who delivers the gas, through their pipelines to the village of Morton. FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, has oversight over that. They have oversight over this program. That discount is off of that index price that we buy today. So for the month of October, first of the month, I think it was $2.12. So it would be a discount off of that index price. So that made me feel a lot more comfortable that it's not some random number or a certain index. Those indexes changed obviously with the market. If you're in Chicago, if you're in the Northeast, those change. So it's nice to know that discount is off of where we're buying it. So really, to me, I appreciate Pat's insight on that. I've met with him at his office a couple times, a lot of phone calls to his cell phone, because I wanted to talk to him soon. He answered every time. But at the end of the day, I think what Pat brings to you are valid, but I just don't see the risk here, in my opinion. I think we stand to save $200,000. I'm willing to even give you guys that information. Will be easy to pull out to even show you that later. As far as how we'll save that money, 50% of that will be off that discount that customers will realize. They may not know it unless they ask me, but that comes straight off on how we set the rates. They'll see 50%. The other 50% will come in the form of a monthly check, basically, to the Village of Morton. At this point, that would go into the gas fund, but those are things we could discuss going forward. As far as some statistics, obviously he mentioned if the big guys jump out, we purchase, I would say for the last 8 years, I mean, we're in that. I mean, it's actually really easy to budget every year. We're pretty consistent. About 1.05, 1.1 MCF a year. So we're very consistent. If we broke that out, Libby's, Caterpillar are the biggest customers. Almost equal. Libby's does fluctuate a little bit, and they're in that 20% range. The big manufacturers, Morton Industries, Matcor, BSI, those are a step below, but they are big customers that account for about 13% of our load. So that's a valid concern that Pat has. Ironically, we sat here tonight and listened to EDC, auditor, and all the great things we're doing here. So I think we've got more worries if we lose a lot of these customers. 50% is residential. So I think the risk is minimal at the end of the day, although Pat's concerns are valid, and I want you guys to weigh that in with the decision.
Do we want to discuss after we make the motion as far as the trustees go then, or start it? What do you want?
Why don't we make a motion in a second, and then trustees can discuss. So you've heard the sides. Somebody can make a motion to.
And I wish we had more time, but this is obviously rates are very low. That kind of plays into this. And November 19th is the date that this goes in. So this is the last regularly scheduled meeting. A lot of the others, 50% of them are tonight too. They have their meetings. So actually Ron's said, please text me after the meeting so I know where you're at. So that's kind of, I wish we had more time to discuss it. Unfortunately, we just don't. It just kind of came up and we were able to put it together.
Well, the opportunities here, we paid the staff, qualified people to investigate it, so.
So moved.
Second.
That's moved to approve.
Yeah, go ahead.
Discussion, I guess.
Yeah, I would, Craig, my thoughts are with, I know those are valid concerns, but the issues are that if we did lose that many customers, we honestly would have bigger problems besides our gas deal. But one of the things that from the EDC perspective, we actually, Leanne took the time to meet with Scott and kind of go over some of these things, and it is a huge selling point for us with this control. And there's a lot of people that don't know that about how well done our infrastructure is, and I actually think this can even help us more, because what are we running at on our load right now as far as capacity? Is it 55% or so? Is that right? Okay. So point is, we have this huge upside to grow, and it's a great selling point from the EDC. So my hope is that we could grow some, and then if we did lose somebody, we're gonna be in a lot better situation. So I agree with you, and I also, from a village perspective, I would hope and pray in the next 30 years nobody considered selling it. I'd give everybody permission to vote those folks out because it's a huge selling point for our village and our community from an infrastructure standpoint. So I think it's a good thing all around. I agree with those. I think those are valid concerns, but at the same token, I think this is a huge win for us and for the village to continue, kind of that, the basis for which that infrastructure set and where we're going with it is going to be a big way for us to attract new customers. So
And we made a big decision when I started. It was probably the toughest decision since I've been here, but my predecessor purchased gas from a different conglomerate. Lon, Scott, I made the decision with the board, but kind of on my own. But Utility Gas Management, we've been with them about 6 years, and I can't say anything better about these guys. I know I tried to sell that to Pat. I'm not asking you guys to, but I got Scott here tonight. These guys are the real deal. Ron has worked on both sides of the business. This is an ugly business on the other side. And I was kind of even switching to utility gas management for some opportunities, but these guys are out to help the little guy, and we're the little guy. And I think there's some significant savings here with this agreement. But I'd be happy to answer any other question. I know Pat would also.
And just to clarify, I'm not making an adverse recommendation against it. I
Right.
just wanted to make sure
We have all the
when we
facts.
jump in that you're
Valid,
informed.
just very valid.
Pat called me
points.
before the meeting, and I knew
Absolutely.
exactly and wanted him to share
Yeah, I think
exactly his concerns. There's
always
nothing
good
to hide
insight.
here.
Ken?
So there's a minimum amount of gas that we need to purchase. Is there a ceiling as to how much we can purchase?
So the
Yes.
UGM's recommendation is a 70% threshold, so the figure we have been operating off was recommended by UGM.
And ours is a little over 70. That was just kind of the average. I've got that here. Actually, I've got since 2013 that shows everything, and we're looking at about 76% is where we're at. 866 MMBTU is where we're at right now.
So from my research, the ratings agencies who rate the bond issue become uncomfortable when utilities are contracting to provide too large of a percentage of their supply for fear that inconsistencies in their demand could adversely affect payments and cause defaults. So there's a sweet spot from what I understand, and this isn't my wheelhouse, from an experience standpoint, but from my research, I can tell you, it appears there's a sweet spot from the bond issue standpoint and how that bond issue is rated, with the rating affecting the discount and how all the numbers work. There's a sweet spot to the supply in terms of having enough, but not too much. And so we've deferred to the guidance of UGM in terms of how to structure our acquisition and have confidence in their recommendation.
And in those 5 to 7 years, I mean, if what you mentioned as a risk, let's say we lose a couple big customers, you're still in those 5 to 7 years going to have discounted gas, which I would anticipate would be no problem for them to unload to somewhere else. Everybody's looking for discounted gas. It would be a series of issues for every town, in my opinion, as opposed to just the village of Morton, to where in that 5 to 7 year there just wasn't discounted and everyone lost their customers, correct? There would be a series of failures here to lose, in my opinion.
Cool.
Now, go ahead.
Just as a simplification, and you probably aren't aware, but monthly, Craig calculates what we're spending to buy gas, and that is put into the bills, and that is what we charge to the homeowner plus the service charges. So by 50% of this being a reduction in what we're paying for the gas up front, that's going to be a savings to everyone who uses gas in Morton. Unfortunately, I don't live in Morton gas area, so it's not going to do me any good, but,
Yeah, awesome.
Ameren will not get this program.
Nope. So, it's going to be, it would be a savings to the average homeowner besides the large commercial user also.
So it's actually a benefit to even those large commercial users.
Oh, it'd be a bigger benefit to
It's a
them,
nice,
yeah.
that's
but-
a nice selling feature for us to be able to go to them.
We have that, Cameron doesn't.
Yeah, so, cool.
And we are, just to be clear too, out of those 51, we're in probably the top 5 of those. I mean, we're still the big guy of the little guys.
fish in
So
a small
we're
pond.
Rensselaer, some of those other ones, we're some of the bigger ones too. I would like to share that though.
Yeah.
So if we don't have our load, it's a little bigger to offset some of the little guys. But they can go outside also and sell the discounted gas. It's not that they just sell it within the 51. If he can earmark it to somebody else, and I think Ron's proven that that's what he does. He can. When I started, we had agreements real quick with BP and all these different companies to open up those different supply chains. Whereas our previous, we were purchasing gas through similar management company, but we had the same supplier for how many years? So you were stuck still with that supplier, whether that be Constellation or whoever that company is. Now we're kind of on our own, and if we can get cheaper gas from somewhere else, backhaul. When the economy or the market conditions are there, there's creative ways that we can get gas. Right now, gas is so cheap, but pretty much purchasing it at basically Panhandle Index, which is around $2 right now. And for those, our gas comes from, a majority comes from Haven, Kansas. That's where about 700 miles away, and it comes through pipelines across the U.S. And we're one little finger that comes up from there down by Glenarm.
Trustee Newman, did you have any other questions?
No.
Trustee Belsley?
I had two questions that are both answered. So,
We meet with Randy, or we talked on the phone before. We went through as much as we could.
Right.
Craig, well, I mean, I think it goes without saying that overall we're in a healthy place. I think if there's a point where we can take on a little bit of risk, I think now's a good time.
Yeah.
I guess a question I would have is we've shown some unfortunate, for the past handful of years, not growth, especially in the sales tax, which I think is a good gauge of whether or not how businesses are increasing and decreasing in this town. So I guess if that would continue to remain more in the flat area, obviously there's probably some other issues that's going to cause. But in this realm, if we're not growing, not that we're going backwards more or less, but if we're not growing at a steady rate, how would that play?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we still got the 866 to take you to the next level. Me and Scott are going to be coming to you guys saying, hey, can we start selling gas outside the Village of Morton limits, which
Okay.
presents its own set of issues. We've discussed that in the past, but if we could pick up some grain dryers and some of that are outside the village limits and turn it into more of a business, we could do that too. And Scott and I would support that tonight if we could. We realize that creates some conditions, and we've discussed that before when it comes to water and everything else. But I think there's opportunities for gas to look outside. Now that becomes difficult because sometimes even with our pipeline, we have some customers that are outside of Morton that gave us easements and stuff to tap onto our pipeline. To add more residential is a tough one for us. It's not a very good cost to benefit ratio, but if you can bring in big grain dryer, stuff like that, that's an added volume and some additional flexibility for us long term. So I'm not saying we got to go there, but in the future, if that's something we want to look to, if we're not growing and we want to keep going, I think we got a pretty good gas superintendent here that's eager, and we'd be ready to do that.
Well, yeah, we're in a pretty sweet spot. About 60% of our load's industrial,
Yeah.
so 40% residential. So there was no growth at all. We're in a good spot.
That's-
Blessed with industry that we can be fine.
I'm not hoping that's the case, but that's good to know.
And then all that industry is going to get a discount on their gas. And if there's not any other questions, we'll call the vote. Call the vote.
Hare,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Bosley.
yes.
Motion passed.
So just the public understands we're getting discount gas and we supported solar. So we are bringing some things to the village here.
There we go.
Okay, planning and zoning officer, looks like you got a couple of things.
I do tonight, Your Honor. Two items from the October 22nd Plan Commission meetings. We held two public hearings for special uses. First one being at 138 and 140. It's Grimm Inc. on Main Street, South Main. This was a special use that was granted a year plus ago. It's not been enacted, so it went away, and they're going to do the project now, so they need to get the special use through the process again. And Plan Commission was unanimous in recommending approval of this, so that is the recommendation that I bring to you, and that's case 18-09 SP.
Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? Call the roll.
Lehman.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That will change downtown.
Yes, it will.
You bet.
For the good.
Yeah.
Both of these cases are for the good, so. The second case that we have is 18-10 SP. It would be for Dan Neep, and it's a property at 4001 West Jackson, former Morton Body and Equipment Building. And what the proposal is for a special use to have both vehicle RV type display area for resale, and then an outdoor area that you see on that drawing that's a part of your packet, an outdoor storage area for vehicles. And the intent is to have an 8-foot fence enclosing that. At the public hearing, there were 2 neighboring property owners, residential property owners that were present, and I think they were both satisfied by the end of the meeting with what was going to be done, and there were no other objectors, and that also came with a unanimous recommendation from the Plan Commission.
So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments?
I think several people might be surprised this is a Morton property, but that's a
Yeah,
good
that's
thing.
why I was just looking at it going, holy cow, those addresses are
Right on the edge.
right on the edge.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be nice to see that, something done with that piece of property there.
Agreed.
That's a nice fence to hide it from the neighbors. It's quite appropriate. Thanks for working with the village. Call the roll.
Newman.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Do any of the trustees have anything tonight? If not, there's no executive sessions. Could I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.